One thing that Andy and I share in common, apart from our devotion to this industry, is we both have almost all of our assets in physical gold and silver. And we do not look at it as an investment. We look at it as wealth. He talks about that all the time. I've seen the inflation over my lifetime where you could live for $5,000 a year when I got married, and now you'd need $100,000 or $150,000 or more to have the kind of lifestyle that I had on $5,000 a year.
You think inflation's coming back?
I don't think it ever left. I mean, how did it leave? They never stopped printing money.
This is Little by Little with Andy Schectman.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode, a special episode of Little by Little. I have the honor of bringing on tonight my father, David Schectman, who had the great idea of sharing our humble beginnings. I've often said the embodiment of the American dream, and I mean that. When you talk about an improbable success story, I think after you hear how we got to where we are, you'll understand what I mean. In any case, thanks for dropping in and welcome, fathers.
It's nice to be here with you. It's been a long journey. The origins of Miles Franklin really started in 1983. In 1983, I went to work for Investment Rarities, at the time, one of the two largest precious metals dealers in America. And the idea of selling gold and silver was something very new to me.
Well, let's back up a minute, though. In 1983, weren't you advised to file bankruptcy, you and mothers?
My wife and I were both big earners until the beginning of 1983. And then at the same time, we both lost our jobs. And 1983 was a recession. And we were both unemployed going into the fall, and we were advised to file bankruptcy. I think we had $50 in our bank account at the time. We had turned our leased car back to the dealer, and we really had a very, very glum future. And the interesting thing was, the last asset that we had to sell were 3 gold coins that I bought from a friend who didn't know what to do with them, and they sat in a drawer for many, many years. And when we were completely out of money and out of all assets, what was left? 3 gold coins. And that was kind of my introduction to gold and silver. Well, anyways, a friend of mine told me that there was a company in Minneapolis who sold gold coins and that they were hiring. And I think the motivation for me to go to work in this industry was purely desperation. I had no interest in anything financial, in investing. It was way out of my radar screen. But as luck would have it, I ended up the only job around going to work for Investment Rarities.
Commission-based only.
Commission only. I had 3 goals when I started working to make $100 in a day, $100 in a month, and $100 in a week. And all 3 within 2 months.
I think you got that wrong. $100 within a day, $100 within a week, and $100 within a month, you'd be serving.
I'm backwards. I'm sorry. $1,000. Excuse me. $1,000 a month, $1,000 a week, $1,000 a day.
Well, what was $1,000 worth in 1983?
A hell of a lot.
Because right now, you'd starve.
Our house, which we purchased around that time for about $50,000 or $60,000, today would be $700,000 or $800,000. So $30,000 a year was a livable wage. In my first year, I earned over 70. And what I decided to do, and I think it was key, Miles Franklin really grew from this, I asked myself, why would you buy a gold coin? Why would I buy a gold coin? I really needed to know the answer to that before I could sell them. And I decided that I had to learn everything that I could about why people should be buying gold. Now, in the early 80s, people sold gold and silver primarily, almost exclusively as an investment, something to make money, to make a profit. You buy it, you sell it for more. It was just another financial asset like a stock or a bond. I quickly came to the conclusion that gold and silver were really much more than that. And I went on a learning binge. Every newsletter writer, every article, I absorbed them and became probably one of the few people, if not the only people in the industry, to decide to educate the people who I worked with, not just to sell them something, but to explain why they needed it and what its purpose was. This was revolutionary in 1983. And we do it now, and we don't give it a second thought. But that's how it started. I quickly was elevated to the position of in-house economist and public speaker, and traveled around the world speaking for investment rarities. Cayman Islands and Hong Kong, Zurich, Switzerland. It was a really interesting job. I was the only one at that time selling gold and silver through education. By 1989, I started writing a newsletter, Future Economic Trends. And the newsletter was written by Dr. John King, and he had passed away. He was a friend of mine, and he endorsed me and Investment Rarities in his newsletter, and he died unexpectedly. And he wrote a deflationary newsletter in a market that was really only focused on inflation. Vern Myers was the only person that I can recall in those days who talked about deflation. So I got a call from my boss, and he said, Dr. King died. What am I going to do? How could he do that to me? And I said, I can do that. And he said, I don't think so. Well, I'd never written before, and I took on the task, and for 2 years, I wrote Future Economic Trends, and it was quite successful. In fact, in 1989, my first issue, my first topic was Japan was about to fall off a cliff. The stock market was overpriced, and it was headed down. It was very timely. And by 1990, it was time to leave. I decided I needed to be on my own. I had a fabulous job and a good future, but I didn't want to report to anybody. About that time, I met two people who were from Switzerland, and they were representing Swiss annuities. And Swiss annuities was pretty much a paper substitute for physical gold. People who bought gold would buy Swiss annuities because it offers privacy and inflation protection and most of the benefits that physical gold did. So I left to form Miles Franklin and brought my son Andy along with me. At the time, you were what? You were 20 years old?
Why don't you tell them how we got the name Miles Franklin? Because that's part of the story. You know, we don't come from anything.
My middle name is Miles, and I had a partner, financial partner, a backer, whose middle name was Franklin. So we took our two names and we formed the company. We had no money. Susan, my wife Susan, and I really could not afford to launch the company. So he funded it with $60,000 for 50% ownership in the company. And we started selling Swiss annuities. For Miles Franklin to succeed, the odds were less than zero. I mean, I had no business experience. We had no money. We were selling a product that nobody knew about, and it was illegal on top of that. It was illegal because the Swiss insurance companies weren't registered within the U.S.
I think illegal is given, let's call it a gray area.
They weren't registered, so you really weren't allowed to do it. But we were selling great products representing very excellent companies, and we were very, very successful. Around 1994, the state of Minnesota figured out what we were doing, and they gave us a cease and desist. So here we were in 1994 with a business, about 4 employees, Andy, I, and 1 or 2 other people at the time, and we weren't quite sure what to do. Well, I came from a gold background, and all of our customers with the Swiss annuities certainly would be interested in gold. So we segued into the gold industry and struggled mightily. In fact, I didn't take a paycheck for several years, and we lived off of my wife's income. She was vice president and key account salesperson for a boutique advertising firm in Minneapolis. And I had some money coming in from Switzerland on deferred commissions. It was really difficult. Nobody was buying gold in the mid and late 1990s. They were all buying stocks. It was the dot-com bubble. By 2000, YK2 hit. Y2K. And Andrew said, Dad, I think we should have all of our Swiss annuities people transfer their Swiss annuities, their Swiss franc investments into gold. We both felt that the gold bull market was just about to explode. The timing was perfect. We made a lot of money for all of our clients in that move. And that launched the second phase of Miles Franklin.
Let me stop you for a moment, because I think it's important just to add a little color here. I've never asked people to do something for our benefit. You can't succeed in business unless what you do is mutually beneficial, that it helps the business, but more importantly, helps the client. Now, the reason I said that, because that coincided with the launch of the European Union. And the Swiss, who were an export nation, said, well, we're going to remain autonomous from the European Union. They were a country that derives the majority of all their GDP from selling other things to the world, like chocolate, like watches. And if they were going to stay out of the European Union, when this is who they traded with, and remain autonomous, at some point, all of those other countries would forego the sweetness of the Swiss chocolate, maybe buy it from Belgium, forego the accuracy of the Swiss watches and buy it from France before having to convert into a very expensive Swiss franc. So I knew that they were going to defend their economy and let their currency fall, no matter what they said. There was no way that they could let their currency rise so much it would have killed their entire economy. So I said, now is the time to move people into gold. There was a reason behind it. It wasn't just for our survival. So I just want to make that clear. And I think it taught me a very important lesson. And that is to look for valuation on a macro level. And I thought that the end of the Swiss franc run was there, and the beginning of the gold run was there. And so it made good sense. And in retrospect, it was right. Gold was under 300, 350 bucks an ounce. And we switched everyone from Swiss franc into gold, literally at the bottom.
Actually, I remember that gold had bottomed at 252.
Yep, and that was 2002.
Right around the turn of the century. Yeah. And another thing that happened at that time, if I'm not mistaken, did we not sell more 10th ounce gold eagles during Y2K than anybody in the country? We really were starting to be the beginning of a force, but it was a very horrible market. At the same time, Y2K gave the market some life, and when gold took off, it didn't look back for 11 years. And our business started to grow, but our business was limited by the amount of people who we could contact. All of our clients either came from people who I brought from the past, or from financial seminars that we would speak at once or twice a year, or we would rent lists. I wrote a newsletter. It started out as a quarterly when we first started Miles Franklin, and then it became a monthly, and then it became a daily. And most of our marketing was through a newsletter. We had maybe 20,000 people who subscribed to it, but maybe only a couple thousand would read it on any given day. And that limited the size of the company. And
people don't understand what that was like. Now, no one was at the beginning. We started the company before the internet, but we were gathering names for the Swiss annuity. We would buy lists from Gary North and Doug Casey. They would come in a giant box, labels that you would pull off one at a time, stick on an envelope, put a newsletter that you would print it off of a word processor and then had copies made at the local printer, put into the envelope, put stamps on it, and bring them to the post office. There was no email. There was no text message. There was no YouTube. It was a very different time. So getting clients and having exposure was much more difficult. Yet there were only a handful of legitimate gold companies. And I think at this point we were beginning to be one somehow, some way, against all odds. But continue.
I'd like to just circle back for a moment. I grew up in a very interesting time frame. In fact, I wouldn't trade it. If I could take my life and plug it in at any point in history, it would be my life, right now. And the changes in my life are amazing. When I was speaking in Hong Kong, I walked out into the hallway and they had tables along the perimeter and vendors were selling products. And I walked up to a table and there was this big box there. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "It's a fax machine." I said, "Who would use it? I mean, nobody owns them." Well, make it long story short, I was there for the beginning of the fax machine. I had one of the first, maybe one of the 3 handheld calculators to come into the United States. A friend of mine worked with an electronics company.
Kill someone with the thing. It was so big.
They were quite large, but like the size of my hand. In fact, I was an assistant buyer for Target at the time, and my merchandise manager walked up, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Can I see that?" And I gave it to him. He says, "I'm taking it. I'm going on a buying trip to the Orient." We were using big calculators of the size of many typewriters. I mean, it was a horrible thing. Anyway, so I saw the cell phone. I saw the fax machine. And when we started Miles Franklin, I remember saying to myself, "I'll never use a computer." And everything was done by hand.
Wasn't the first car a horse and buggy?
No, it wasn't, but it only cost me $60. So things were cheap in those days. So when I started writing newsletters, Dr. King's son gave me a word processor. So I typed the newsletter on a word processor. Eventually, thank goodness for the mouse and for Apple, I ended up with a computer, and the business was just somehow succeeding with no money, with no business background, with no technical background, mostly in a bear market. We always were fighting negative commentary from the media, plus manipulation from the banks.
Same from our family.
It was an interesting time. We managed to pay our bills, and I want to show you something here from that time frame. Let's see if we can get this here.
Oh boy.
Okay. That's me on the left. That's my daughter, Betsy. She's older than Andrew. She works for Miles Franklin in the stores division. Andrew and my wife, Susan, without whom Miles Franklin would not have survived because she paid all the bills for 5 years. And the person who took the picture is Andy's current wife, Shanna. Small world.
The night of my wedding, my first wedding, my father said, "Why aren't you with her?" And I said, "Dad, I'm getting married tonight." He said, "Exactly. I guess father knows best."
Well,
Do you want to come say hi? Come say hi.
you should come say hi.
Come here.
Come on. And I'd like Susan to also. We'll show you the girls who make this company work. This is Shanna, Andy's wife, and the photographer at his first wedding. She's the hardest working person in Miles Franklin. And without her effort, the company would not be today what it is.
She's very camera shy. We had a baby naming, and she got up on stage. She said hi, started bawling hysterically, and that was all she could say.
Stick your pretty face in the camera here, honey. This is Andy's mom. She's one of the successful Schectmans. She made her money in advertising. He did very well and allowed us to survive when the company was not doing business. By the way, the Franklin and Miles Franklin bailed when the state of Minnesota came after us for selling Swiss annuities. Dummy, yes. I ended up owning all of the company instead of half.
Maybe we should just clarify what the state of Minnesota said, because I think we're painting a picture of illegality. The state of Minnesota, and it was actually, what's her name? She was
Amy Klobuchar.
Amy Klobuchar was the district or the state attorney general of the state of Minnesota.
He was the insurance commissioner, actually. I think. Anyway,
they came to us and said, you need to cease and desist. But before they did that, they contacted all of the clients in the state of Minnesota who had purchased Swiss annuities, which is legal to do. It just can't be promoted. And basically, we said we were educating, and they said that doesn't count. Every one of the people they contacted said, leave us alone. We love the product. We love the company. So there wasn't any fine or there wasn't any repercussions other than having to reinvent ourselves in the middle of the game.
Well, she made it very clear. Stop right now. You can't do this. So it was a good thing. It steered us into the business that we should have been in all along. But when I left Investment Rarities in 1990, the last thing you really would want to do would be to open a gold company. It was a bear market. And there'd be no way, really, you could launch successfully a new gold company into that market at that time. The Swiss annuity was a novel product and a wonderful product, actually. So there was a time in the 70s when inflation was really taking off, and nobody at that point really understood what inflation was. We were living with it, but we didn't understand it. But what I did know was that they were offering a local gas station near where we lived would give you a gallon of gas for a silver dime. Actually do that. And there was an electronics store not far from where we lived that would give you a black and white TV for $2 or $3 silver. So inflation had reached a point with silver rising where we saw barter. And when Andrew promotes junk silver, 364 dimes and quarters and halves, there may be a time in the future when you'll be able to use those for barter. I hope we don't see that, but it's happened before. I tell you, I'm looking back now. In my lifetime, I've seen things change so dramatically. When we got married, my first job was $4,800 a year, a car and expenses, and we got along fine.
It's just insanity.
It's insanity. And Andrew talks about little by little and then all at once. It's kind of been, when you're talking about the gold industry, it's more linear. It's not little by little and all at once. It's been a gradual but constant move up ever since 1980, when I first had any knowledge of what this industry was. I had a friend in the late 70s, a couple blocks away, who told me two things. I remember to this day, he said, someday every house will have a computer. It was such a radical statement. I said, well, for what? Well, it'll turn on your oven and your sprinkler system. There was no internet, so he had no idea. But he was right about the computer. And he also had just purchased 200-ounce silver bars. This was late 70s. And I said, well, why would anybody want silver? I have 70,000 ounces of physicals. So I guess I feel that, yeah, people should own silver. By the way, one thing that Andy and I share in common, apart from our devotion to this industry, is we both have almost all of our assets in physical gold and silver. And we do not look at it as an investment. We look at it as wealth. He talks about that all the time. I'll be leaving physical gold and silver to my children, to my grandchildren. I don't have to spend my portfolio. I earn enough money from the company where my savings can remain where they are. There is no way, and I've seen it. I've seen the inflation over my lifetime where you could live for $5,000 a year when I got married, and now you'd need $100,000 or $150,000 or more to have the kind of lifestyle that I had on $5,000 a year.
You think inflation's coming back?
I don't think it ever left. I mean, how did it leave? They never stopped printing money. The word inflation, I think the government uses it just to confuse people. This is all about currency debasement. Prices don't go up, the buying power of the currency goes down. It takes more and more money to buy the same things. People call that inflation, but it's really currency debasement. So the real question is, if you want to know, should I own gold or silver, then ask yourself, will the government, and this is global, not just continue to print money? If they can ever reach a point where they balance a budget and don't have to borrow and print money, there'd be very little reason to own gold and silver. But we're looking at multi-trillion-dollar annual deficits, a debt that is so out of control. Andy, when you and I moved down to Florida in 2020, 21, I think the debt was 22 trillion, and now in a couple of years it'll be 40 trillion. All of this money creation is doing nothing more than telling me that you can't win in dollar assets. Yeah, things look good for a while until they don't. Every market is a bubble, and all bubbles collapse. People in real estate and stocks and bonds will rue the day that they didn't sell and get out while they still could. Gold and silver will always have value. There was a time would have been late 1980s, I was speaking at a seminar in Hong Kong. And one of the people who was speaking was a Swiss banker named Frank Baumann from the Focal Bank in Switzerland. And he told a story that has stuck with me, and I think it exemplifies why I put my extra money into gold. He said, when I was a young man, every week I set aside 1 ounce of gold. Now that I'm an old man, every week I take out 1 ounce of gold. I will never be broke. I will never live on a park bench. I secured my future. And one of the ways that I looked at how much gold was necessary, I think you can kind of work this out on the back of a napkin with a pen and a pencil and try and estimate your life expectancy. Let's just say you have 20 years left to live and you need $100,000 a year to lead the lifestyle that you want. So you need 20 years times 100,000. Right now, gold is approximately, let's just call it $2,500 an ounce. Let's just say 100 ounces is 250,000. So you'd need about 50 ounces a year of gold to get your 100,000. So 50 ounces times 20 years, 1,000 ounces. That right? My math right? Yeah. That's how much gold you would need to continue your lifestyle at the level that you're used to over the end of your life. And that's all you would need. Every week you take out your coin, just like Frank Baumann did, and you can even figure out how many coins that you need. Now, you can't do that with dollars. If I left you and your sister the same amount of money back when we started Mild Strengthen in 1990, and I gave her a let's see, we're looking at 250. I gave her $250, and I gave you an ounce of gold. Today, your $250 would buy you an okay dinner for 2 people at a restaurant, and your ounce of gold would be worth
10 times.
10 times that way. Again, this isn't inflation. This is currency debasement. Look, it's not complicated. We are facing, we have to deal with the power of the media, the government, corrupt bullion banks who manipulate the price of gold and silver and give everybody a false narrative. They tell you buy gold, buy stocks, buy bonds, buy real estate. They never mention gold. What surprises people who really aren't aware of it is that gold has outperformed the S&P 500 since the year 2000. And this has been the greatest bull market in stocks ever in the last 20, 25 years. And poor little gold sitting there quiet and ignored has kept up. It's kept up. And it really, it's an amazing asset. It truly is. So sometimes I think about, should I own Bitcoin? Should I be buying NVIDIA or any of the big 7 stocks? And my answer is no. I am more interested in preservation of capital than in accumulating wealth. Now, it depends on your age. If you're young, you would really probably be better served to try and accumulate wealth, and maybe you would do it in mining shares or top quality stocks, whatever you want to do. But once you reach a point past 50 or 60, you should be more concerned with preservation of money. My mentor, Jesse Cornish, used to say, it's about return of principle, not return on principle. And the one thing that I know, and I've been doing this now for 40 years, is you won't regret putting away physical metals going forward. In fact, it's more necessary now than ever before because the currency debasement is out of control. Trump is the president. He has some very positive ideas on what to do with the economy. All of them will be good for the price of gold. There's no way that we can avoid major currency debasement and major inflation going forward. And there are different ways you can try and deal with that. But when it comes to gold and silver, and by the way, the one thing that gold and silver have that most investments don't, it's liquid. I can pick up the phone and have somebody come over and pick it up and pay me same day back in Minneapolis. Or you can sell it back to Miles Franklin. How does that process work, by the way?
We lock it into the same thing in reverse. We lock it in, send an invoice, help them mail it back, and send them away.
Yeah, it's you have real estate. You're going to have a $5 million home or condo, and you want to sell it, and 6 months later, it's still on the market. I mean, liquidity is everything because when you need it, you better have access to it, and gold and silver does that. So when I started the company, my goal was not wealth, not fame, none of that. I wanted to form a business that didn't need.
No boy, did it ever not.
Well, sometimes you would get a little upset, Dad. Well, why aren't you working harder? Why aren't you here more? That was never my goal. I've got you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have done better. Andy is amazing. And I don't say that because he's my son. He really is amazing. I mentioned 3 phases of Miles Franklin. The first one was Swiss annuities, segued into gold. And around 2020, I was still a little active in the company. I think I wrote newsletters probably up until close to that point. Anyways, he said, Dad, I want to go on the internet. And I think we have a story to tell. I want to tell people we can offer more than anybody. We'll be competitive in price and give them even more than that. And it was a major change in marketing. We were still doing our marketing with a daily newsletter. I brought in Bill Holter and Andy Hoffman. The 3 of us wrote daily. It was a hell of a newsletter. The problem was we couldn't reach very many people. Well, Andy had the vision. He was the only one in the company who did that. There's a better way to do this. I think if you want to be successful in business, you have to bring in younger people. Younger people see things different. We're all in our own little box and we have our narrow vision.
I'll still never understand why everyone in the company thought that was fair.
Because they were all old. There were no young people there, Andrew. There were people I brought in from Investment Rarities. They were older than you, and they didn't understand the internet. You did. And it in a nutshell, it increased our business from 100 million a year to $1 billion a year. It's a tenfold. We make in a month what we did in a year. We're the same company selling the same products with the same story. The only thing that changed was being able to reach a lot of people. And I think the brilliance of this marketing program that you set up for Miles Franklin, which I never could have done, is that it's free advertising. Can you imagine? I mean, being able to reach hundreds of thousands or over time, millions of people for free. It's a perfect marketing strategy at the perfect time. And once we started doing this, I decided, you know what? There are too many cooks in the kitchen. I really should step aside. John and Andrew have done such a fabulous job. I'm just in the way at this point. And, you know, I lead a very nice life. By the way, I spend as much time watching podcasts and reading as I ever did. 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I am totally informed on what's going on politically, geopolitically, precious metals, all the markets. I share a lot of what I think are excellent podcasts and articles with Andy, trying to help him be as up to date as he can. He wears a lot of hats. He has to research. He has to sell. He has to run the business. He has to take care of every aspect of it. Barely has enough time to golf. Lives on a golf course and can hardly golf.
It's a labor of love.
For all of you listening, and I mean this sincerely, Miles Franklin is a uniquely special company. It started out as a small family business. It grew unbelievably because everything we did was right. We treated our customers with respect. We educated them. We gave them the best possible service, the best possible pricing. You know, the people who we compete with in this industry who sell product, same thing we do at the same price, don't give you personal service. We have brokers. You can talk to people who can answer any question that you have in this business. The model that I set up in 1990 was as revolutionary as the model that you changed it to in 2020, 2021. I often joke with my son a couple of things. We laugh when we say, how did we get here? I mean, it's an unbelievable story. It shouldn't have happened.
No.
But it did. And then it's a blessing. And now we have Andy's boy, John.
Before we talk, I want to let him in a little bit. I see him in the back room. My son was someone who we told that he would have to find his own way, that we didn't want to bring him into the family business, that he needed to go discover himself and you know, kind of get his own wings underneath him. And he did. He graduated from one of the most prestigious business schools in the United States, Ross School of Business. He moved to Manhattan by himself, got a CPA at Price Waterhouse. Why don't you tell everyone how you both, behind my back, plotted against me to bring him on board before I let him on and he can introduce himself. Because for almost 6-7 months, I had no idea what was going on.
I felt he was ready for the job. Josh has a combination of qualities that you don't find too often that guarantee success in this business. He's hardworking. He's organized. That's part of his accounting background. And he knows how to sell. He's pleasant. So here he's living in New York on $60-some thousand a year, has to live with several roommates because he can't afford to own his own place. He's almost starving to death. what he could be making six figures within 6 months working in the family business. So he and I talked, and I said, I think you should come to work for the company, Josh. Anyways, you're a Schectman. You're the future. And he said, I don't think my mother and my father really want me to do this at this point. I said, that's okay. I do. So I gave him all the knowledge that I had, the same kind of knowledge that I shared with you.
Without telling me that
Well,
you were
that's
doing
okay. You found out soon enough.
soon enough, like 7 months later.
But took him 6-7 months to absorb it all. By the time you knew, he was ready. So I explained to him, he must have read it.
He read 17 books.
17 books. Okay. This is the way he is. And I would teach him how to sell and what to say and what customers and clients want and what they need. I figured he's the future for the company. And he is so happy. He got his ass out of Manhattan, moved to Denver so he can hike and ski, and he's building a future in a company business. When I look back at my high school graduating class, there were 2 or 3 people who became very wealthy, anywhere from a centimillionaire to a billionaire. All the people who were successful that I graduated with had one thing in common. Do you know what that was? They all had a family business. That is the greatest gift that a person can have. It's so hard to accumulate significant wealth without your own business. If you're working for other people, they make the money and you do the work. So somehow we were able to come along with and develop Miles Franklin. It's been fabulous for me. It's certainly been fabulous for you, and it'll be fabulous for Josh too. And my daughter's working there on top of that. We are as big as the big boys, but we're just a small family business.
I'll bring Josh on now. I'll let him tell a little bit of that story. How we went to a concert together. He shocked me. Good evening, my son.
I'm good to be here.
But
Thank you for having me. Papa,
did you hear any of what I was just saying?
I did. I was here.
Are you able to tell a little bit of that story? How you, the legacy down the road to this company. Hopefully I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. But you know, having an exit strategy or having some sort of a plan, I guess you could say, is important, something we never had. And certainly we're thrilled that you're here. But why don't you tell the story how you kind of blindsided me by your intentions and aspirations and all of the plotting that you did with my father to finally come to be at Miles Franklin. Because I think it's an endearing story.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to share it. I like to say it starts far before that and probably as far back as I can go. One of the stories that I love telling my clients is when I was in kindergarten and you picked me up one day and I sat in the back seat and I don't think I've ever told you this story before, but I was in awe thinking, I can't believe my father, you were on a phone call. I was thinking, how could this guy that I trust and love sell his clients junk? I don't get it. And you were telling a client to buy junk silver. And ever since that time, I always thought, well, one day I'll grow up and work for Miles Franklin. It's awfully funny when you're young. It seems like such an easy task. As you grow up, it was far from easy. And I appreciate the kind words you said. I graduated from college and did what all my peers did, which was move to a big city, work at a big firm. I was auditing real estate investment trusts at the biggest or second biggest accounting firm in the world. I was a little cog in the machine, and I think it was a great experience. But as I realized I wasn't where I wanted to be, in a location, and I decided I wanted to move to Denver. A day or two after I moved here, I had just slept on the side of the road for 4 days in Pennsylvania, then Illinois, then Iowa. I got here and I thought, I don't know anyone, I don't know anything. And so naturally I decided, well, let's do something new. Let's pick up a book. And that same day I had talked with Papa here, David, and when you move across the country, your mind is focused on change and development and growth. And I thought, well, if I moved halfway across the USA, let's think about what I want to do with other types of change. And I realized after going through a very informative and relatively difficult year at PwC, I learned a lot of things, did a lot of work. I worked long hours. I thought, if I can do that, I can certainly learn a little bit about this industry. Now, the thing that I guess I can fill in the story is I had no idea if I was taking a stupid risk or not. And I don't even think Papa knew. What I thought is, okay, best case scenario, I learned this and I get accepted in. Worst case scenario, I know a lot about it and that will help too.
Why don't you tell everyone what Mom said to you a year or so earlier about you maybe working at Miles Franklin?
Well, she straight up told me, no, you're not going to. I love her. She's a wonderful woman. But when you get it that straight up, I thought, you know what, I'll prove her wrong. Now in life, when you grow up as a Schectman, the first thing you learn is to work your butt off. And I started working a month after I was legally able to in the state of Minnesota. And I think that impressed her and impressed my family. And so I have that in me and I thought I could do it. So I guess I'll tell you the story now of what I told my dad here. And that was that to me, it wasn't much that I needed to do to prove to myself, but to prove to the family was a bar all the way up there. And so my first thought was to read a book or two. And thankfully, David here sent me the first two. And it was Franz Pick and one other one, but it was about the Federal Reserve. And I remember sitting in a hotel in Florida over Thanksgiving last year with my girlfriend at the time saying, I'm going to start reading this every single day and it's going to be just as important as brushing your teeth and putting on your pants. And so every day, without a doubt, no matter what, even if I was working till 10, 11 p.m. at night, I would read and jot some notes down. But as I started to realize that just reading a book on the Fed and a little book on gold, it wasn't going to do me any good. So I pretty much looked at every book you could imagine and bought it. At this point, I had accumulated 18 books. I think 9 on gold and silver, 6 on the inflation, 3 on the Fed, and a few more on how to talk on the phone. But to me, that was nowhere near enough because that was the history and that wasn't anything going on right now. When you're in college and you hear your dad's doing podcasts, you don't think much about it. And I didn't look at it much, so I thought, okay. And I remember the first day I was lifting weights and I put on a video and I had no idea what you were saying, not a single clue. I didn't know a word. I had no idea. So I said, okay, I have to start jotting down notes here too. So I watched every video, Liberty and Finance. I mean, all these guests that were coming in and out every week, and I watched every single one. And to me, that was my Bible. It was, I would forget to drink water before forgetting to watch these videos. And I got 2 textbooks about this big filled with notes and notes and notes. Eventually, I started recording myself describing those notes. I have a vivid memory last year, skiing down the mountains of Vail, listening to myself recite the notes I took on a book. Regardless, it all came together. And I called my dad and I said, Bob Dylan's coming to town. I'd love to see him in Fort Lauderdale with you. Now, though this was absolutely true, there was other motives. And I was getting, similar to a quarterback, I was getting coached on the side by David here, by Papa, and he told me the things to say. And we sat down at a steak restaurant, and one thing about Andy and I, we definitely eat our food and we eat it quick. It's the only time I've ever seen my dad not eat a bite of his steak. We ordered a steak restaurant, and I said, Dad, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. And my heart was beating faster than anything. And I said, this is what I did. He didn't know. I'm ready. I'm willing. And the last thing I'll say on this story, I guess I got Schectman in me if I talk a lot. To me, it wasn't about putting myself in a better situation monetarily or work-life balance. I was fine. To me, it was about building onto something and helping people, because I realized when I was in an accounting firm, I was a cog in a machine, not helping people. And truly the joy to me is when a client calls and trusts me enough to be able to handle their finances. That's all the joy in the world.
So, Josh, the name of that book was The Secret of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins.
Thank you, Mullins.
We knew that in the mid-'80s. Nobody even knew about conspiracy theories in the Fed. I'm already deep into that 40 years ago. I kind of thought of myself as kind of a Peter Schiff 20, 25 years before he came on the scene. I was a little early. Andrew, timing for you was perfect, and you have the audience for it. One thing that I think is unique about our business, and it's really amazing if you think about it, we get people who we've never met, only talk to on the phone, who will send us $1 million or more sight unseen. I mean, what business do you have where you send people thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars and you really don't know much of anything about them?
At this point in our career, it's believable because we've done almost 11 billion in gross sales without a customer complaint ever, which to me is an accomplishment worth mentioning, something that I'm shocked by. But back in the day, when I was Josh's age, one room office the size of the closet, not knowing shit about anything, it made me reflect over and over and over and over.
Speaking of that, there was a time that I imagine paying $200 or $300 a month for rent then, and that was too much. We actually considered shutting down that office and moving into your basement.
Josh was just a little baby.
Pay the rent. Yeah. No, we have survived some very difficult times, but I think my experience working at Investment Rarities for 7 years taught me how to work with people, what they needed. You had to gain people's confidence. Somehow you had to convince them not only that you were selling them the right product at the right price, but that you were honest. We work in an unregulated industry, and there's a lot of bad characters in this industry, people who will take your money and not deliver, who will make promises and not deliver. I often say when I left Investment Rarities, I learned a lot about how to form a new business. I learned what not to do. And although they did a lot of things right, they did a lot of things that I felt we could improve upon. We have a good business model. It really hasn't changed since the day you first came to work for Miles Franklin. We educate people. We're honest. I'll give you an example of what I mean by honesty and integrity. When we started the business, we had a wholesaler who we worked with who would provide all of our product to our clients. He would send us every 2 weeks a blank check. He signed it. We filled in the amount of the commission that we were owed. How long did we do that for? Over 10 years?
Probably.
Yeah. That's who we are. That's the way we do business, and that's the way we treat our customers. I am so thrilled to see the success that Andrew has lifted Miles Franklin to. It just blows me away. And I think the good times are just about to start. If you think what's going on now is exciting, if you think $32 silver is great and $2,600 gold is fantastic, you haven't seen anything yet. This is just the orchestra tuning up before the curtain lifts and the performance starts. Either you're going to win or you're going to lose. There's going to be no in between. And most people who are in dollar-based financial assets will be on the wrong side of this. And the people who own gold and silver and maybe Bitcoin, that remains to be seen. It's not going to be in the currency. And Andrew has made a name for himself in this industry by pointing out how fragile the U.S. dollar is and the enormous amount of interest in the BRICS and countries who want to join that to abandon the dollar. Now, I don't know what will replace it, but Right now, there are only two Class 1 assets.
Sure one.
Tier 1 assets. It's gold U.S. Treasuries. And when the dollar heads south, the Treasury won't be worth anything either. It's dollar denominated. We're doing the right thing. I tell you what, you could wrap me up. My epitaph could be, he was usually right and always early. And that's us in this industry. Because we look at the fundamentals and things should be happening much faster in our industry than they are. They keep...
Make that statement going back 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, forever. They hold down the price, they suppress it. When I started working, the total national debt was just a little bit over $1 trillion. And now, whatever, Dow Jones, every 90 days, we're creating another $1 trillion in debt. And things are moving in the direction that I knew that they would. I never would have thought ever would have taken this long. But that's okay. I mean, you know, it's, we're right. We've always been right, and our recommendations are right. Whatever little we make on a sale is nothing compared to the asset that we put in people's possession. We have helped so many people, thousands and thousands of them over the years, to secure their financial future. I think we've done a wonderful thing, actually, with Miles Franklin. So I'm thrilled to have someone as honest and excellent as Andrew to carry on the business. And I think Josh will be equally good when he inherits it. Andrew's working too hard. I figure another 10 years you'll need some help. And you can golf all the time, but take it easy. So it's been quite an experience. It never should have happened. No way we should have ever made it, but we did.
Got anything you want to say? Parting words you'd like to say, my son?
Just as this is my podcast debut, I guess thanks for tuning in. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope to be around a lot more.
Rock and roll.
What do you
That's
say?
another thing that Josh and I share in common. We have an intense interest in music. And
My real last point will be, I've had a lot of clients say, Andy has those guitars in his back. He must really play. I'm the one that plays. He's the one that listens.
All right. I think we've covered a lot tonight. And, you know, this was about letting people know what we're all about more than anything. You know, you can get an opinion of a company by watching me on YouTube for a few years at a period of time where, you know, gold and silver have gone up, and there's just this illusion that everything came easy to Miles Franklin. And I wanted people to know, and I think rightfully so, that no, we earned our spot at the table, and we'll continue to work hard for all of you out there, and make sure that none of you represent the first customer complaint we've ever had in 35 years. This February, it will be 35 years. So we're almost there. In any case, Josh, maybe I'll see you online tonight on our live stream. I think we need to go eat some dinner.
very good. Thank you for letting me join you on this, Andrew.
Don't get used to it. There.
Josh, I love you, buddy.
Little by Little with Andy Schectman.